welcome to Learning Music with Pat. Today I'm going to start off by showing you an instrument that likely you have never seen before. This is a ney, N-E-Y, and it's fairly long, and it's made out of cane, although some of these instruments are also made out of bamboo. Cane is kind of like a vegetative plant, and it grows in the southern areas of the world, and it's used to make instruments in a similar way as bamboo is used to make instruments. But I want to show you this because it's interesting. There's a little notch in the front. Let me show you that. Air goes through that notch. My finger is right below it. I don't know if you can pick that up or not. There's no regular mouthpiece on this instrument. There's the notch. It has a cap on it. I can pull this cap off, and then what do you got? You've got nothing except that little notch and the space of the tube where the air goes through. That's it. There are no tone holes. There's nothing like a fingerboard. That hole goes, of course, all the way through, and there it is. It's a plain tube, kind of made out of the cane, with one notch on it. Open up both ends, and that's it. That's all it is. And it's interesting because there are a number of instruments that I have that are called open flutes. In other words, they're open-blown flutes. End-blown flutes is the word I'm looking for. An end-blown flute is a flute that has no mouthpiece. Sometimes it'll have a notch. Sometimes it'll just be an open area. It usually has a little notch here, but there's usually a notch on top that you blow through, and the air goes down and it goes through this notch here. This one does play some. You would never be able to play songs or scales or anything like that with it. You just kind of blow across it. I want to show you a few other end-blown flutes. I have 2 or 3 here with me. I have more than that, but just to give you a chance, all you do when you play this is notes come out. No scales, no songs, no chromatic scales, just notes come out, and you can blow it and make some sounds out of it. But when I bought it because it said it was a musical instrument that you could play notes with and everything you wanted to play without any kind of a fingerboard. In other words, the fingerboard is where the tone holes are. On keyboards, it's called the keyboards, but on instruments such as recorders and instruments such as these, if you have a set of tone holes, it's called a fingerboard. So let me show a couple of other things here. A lot of these end-blown flutes come from African countries, Asian countries. I have some from Peru. I have some from Morocco. Here we have an end-blown flute, and there's no mouthpiece, as I showed before. It's very nicely designed. It's nice to look at. There is this part. It's called a labium. On a recorder, it would be called a labium, and this is where it is. And then this part is completely blocked off except for a little crack that they have made in it, and that little crack is the mouthpiece. I think it was etched in there by a knife or something because it's not even. It's kind of crooked, but this is all blocked out. Just that, and then that little labium that I showed you before. And there is some tone holes here, so you should be able to play a scale, at least to a certain degree, and there's no hole in the back at all, just in the front. And the interesting thing, the labium that you find on a recorder is always on the front. This would be on the back, because the tone holes, in order for you to play it, have to be on the front. And so your little crack for where the air goes for your mouthpiece is on the back, and that labium is on the back too. You don't see it if you're playing it. So this comes from Morocco. It was given to me by a friend of mine. I have another one. And here you can see there's an opening in the front. For the tube, it goes all the way across, it goes all the way down, and you have that little notch right here. You kind of blow across that notch, and then that stays on top because your fingerboard is on the top, and you do have a tone hole thumb hole in the back. So it's designed a little differently, and you should be able to play it as a regular instrument. But it's very hard to play, and I can get sounds out of it, but I'm not going to fool around with it because I'm not that good at it. I usually like to have a regular mouthpiece, but these end-blown flutes do work, and some Indian tribes use instruments like this. I have another one I want to show you, and this one here comes from the Caribbean. You can get different sound. There's no tone hole in the back. The labium is on the back. It's just kind of a little cutout piece. There is the top of it is all blocked off like the other instruments. There's a little slit that kind of acts like a little bit of a mouthpiece, if I can get that so you can pick it up. I don't know if you can or not. Yeah, that's good. You can see that. A little opening here, but most of it is blocked off. And then you have that little labium right behind it. Whoops, right behind it. But you have to play it, which to me seems backwards because all of the tone holes are in the front. This one comes from the Caribbean. But it does make nice sounds, and if I worked with it, I'd be able to play something on it because it does have tone holes. It's easier to play than some of the other, and I've just blown into it so you could get a kind of a sampling of the tone that it gives. It's not hard to play, and the design is really nice. This is a beautiful instrument. So you see, the world is full of wonderful instruments that play sometimes fairly well, sometimes very well, that designed well. These are the end-blown, what's called the end-blown flutes. They do not have a regular mouthpiece on them, but you blow across them, almost like a Coke bottle. They usually have a notch in them, a little place where you can put air, and a labium. They have that much, but some of them don't even have finger holes. So you can't play them like a regular instrument. So in order to get this, so you can see it, this is a cap that goes on it. I'll put the cap back in. It's just basically for its protection. You screw it in and that's it. Now when I first got it, it came like that because the cap was on it. And I said, what is it? I knew I ordered it. I knew it was an instrument, but I didn't know quite how to figure it out. And then, of course, I figured out you have to take the cap off before you do anything. This is a cane, a real cane instrument. Now, I want to mention something about cane. It's not only used to make some instruments, but it's also used to make reeds. If you have anybody, or you know anybody, or you yourself are playing saxophone, clarinet, oboe, bassoon, because the flute doesn't count because it doesn't have any reeds. But a lot of times you'll be playing a reed that will be made from cane. This is a cane reed. This is from one of my saxophones. And it just looks like a wooden reed. It is a wooden reed. And you can see the way it's designed. It's flat on the bottom. That's what you would actually put on the mouthpiece. And then the top kind of slants down, and it gets thinner and thinner by the top. Now, there are other reeds made by plastic, or this can be plastic coated, but I want to mention these cane reeds. You can usually buy them in a box of about 25. So, in fact, I have boxes of reeds like that, 25 Rico reeds, and they're all cane. These are the best kinds of reeds because they're most responsive. They vibrate the best, you know. There are other ways of making reeds, but the cane reeds are always the best. So when you're going to put them on a mouthpiece, this is a mouthpiece from one of my saxophones, and this is the ligature, and because this is for people who are playing saxophone mainly, but you would take, and the clarinet is the same. You take your mouthpiece out, there's an opening in the mouthpiece, you put it on the flat side down, and then you put the ligature on it, which is this metal piece. You always put the wide part in first, and then, on this side, and you slip it down, and then just tighten it. Now, sometimes these reeds come and they're not in the best of shape. If you have a box of reeds, the best thing for you to do is to take each reed and take a look at it and see how good they are, because you'll always have some reeds in a box that are better than others. It should look very, very, you can hold it up to the light and it should look almost opaque, and then it gradually gets darker and darker and thicker as the reed gets thicker. Now, sometimes you'll find that it is too stiff. If a reed is too stiff, you can lower it a little bit so that it doesn't quite reach the top, and that will act to soften it a bit. You don't have to do it very much. If it's too soft, you can stiffen it by pushing it up a little bit above the mouthpiece, not much, hardly noticeable. That will make it stiffer. Usually you take it off and you look at it in the light and you just watch and look and see how the light goes through it. When the light goes through it, you can tell where it's getting thicker and thicker. I'm going to pull this out and do that again so you can see it. If you hold it up, I don't think it's going to make much sense to you, but you might be able to tell that it's a little lighter on the top. It gets a little thicker and more opaque as you go to the bottom. It should be a very gradual transition. And if it's a gradual transition, the reed is very good. If it seems to be too thick in one part and too thin in another part, so it's not all the way across the same and gradually thickening, then it may not be a good reed. So you just have to look at it, each particular reed, and go through them all. And then, of course, the real test is how they play. If they play well, then you know you have a good reed. A cane reed, which is the best reed, will only last for about 25 hours of playing time. I'm going to put this together again. Will only last for about 25 hours of playing time, and then you have to change the reed. It loses its resiliency, and so therefore it doesn't sound as good. Now you can also get wooden cane reeds that are plastic coated. I'm going to put this down right here. Here's a reed that looks black. This is a plastic, what's called a plastic coated reed. It is a wooden reed. If you are close enough, you can see some of the grains of the wood, but they cover it with a black coated plastic. The beauty of it is because you can just put it in your mouth and play. I actually, of all the reeds I've tried, like the plastic coated the best, because a reed has to be moist. You have to put it in your mouth and kind of suck on it and keep it moist if it's a regular plain cane reed, and it has to remain moist. Otherwise, if you don't, when you try to play it, it's just going to squeal. So you have to put that reed in your mouth and suck on it and make sure it's moist. And if you're playing in an orchestra, you see players with reeds in their mouths as they switch their music, as they go to another song and all of that. You don't have to do that with a plastic coated reed. You stick it in your mouth and you play it. It plays easily. It plays well. This is one of my clarinet reeds, and I use them a lot. Another kind of reed that you can get is called a berry reed. A berry reed is just pure and simple plastic. The beauty of these reeds, they have their advantages and they have their disadvantages. The beauty of this reed is that you can't kill it. I mean, you can use it for months and months and months and months, maybe even for years. I've had some that last for years, and they always play, and they never crack. Usually when you get just the plain cane reed, they will split after a while, or they'll chip, and then they're no good after that. This thing is almost indestructible, but it's very hard to play. It doesn't vibrate in the same kind of way as the wooden reeds are. It does work, you can play it, but it's harder on your lips. It's harder to get the vibration out of it. And the beauty is that it lasts forever, but it's hard on your lips. It's hard in your mouth. So I'm not crazy about them, but I do use them, simply because I don't want to buy reeds every time I turn around. Reeds are expensive. So those are the reeds. The best one And I have it back on my saxophone mouthpiece. Best one is the Keene reed, and I think I prefer the plastic coated because it's easy. So this is what I wanted to show you about Keene instruments. The ney is an unusual instrument, and very few people have them. It's not rare. People do buy them, but I think I'm the only one I know that even has one. So that's what I wanted to show you today. Now, let's just take, and I've got some information here. It's spelled N-E-Y. It's some of them are bamboo. This one is cane. It's used in Egypt and in Persia, and it's an end-blown instrument. And you blow across the end to give sounds. And this one, or many of them, come from Turkey. Now, the cane is also used to make mouthpiece reeds for woodwind instruments. The end-blown instruments, which I've shown you a few. I have more than what I brought in. Many are from Morocco and Peru. Mine are from Morocco and Peru. You blow air across the notch of the opening in the flute, and some of them have fingerboards and some of them do not have fingerboards, and so you can make sounds out of them without the fingerboard, but you can actually get notes if they do have fingerboards. So that's what happens when you have an end-blown flute. You probably won't be playing it a whole lot, but you can play it. Every time that I do a show, I'd like to bring in an instrument that you probably will not be able to see unless you see it here, because I have such a collection. Now, what I want to go over today with you, I want to go over arpeggios, what they are, chords, what they are, phrases, slurring, and tonguing. All of these things are really quite important to playing instruments. If you want to play and you want to sound good, you've got to be able to know how to phrase an instrument. You have to know how to tongue it. You have to know how to slur it, and you have to know what arpeggios are and chords. So I'm going to start off with chords and arpeggios. We don't do chords on woodwind instruments or brass instruments. It takes an instrument that you can play more than one note at a time. Pianos can do it, guitars can do it, but arpeggios are like chords. So that's why I want to bring in the chords, because an arpeggio is playing a chord, but playing it one note at a time. So let me show you something. If I'm to play a chord, and I brought in my melodica, this is a Hohner melodica from Germany. If you are playing a chord, you're playing 3 to 5 notes, and usually they're a third apart. So let me just show you. That's a chord. I played 4 notes. They're at least 2 notes apart. They're thirds, and that's the chord. You can have chords in major. You can have chords in minor keys, but the fact is you play 3 to 5 notes in thirds, maybe flatted, maybe sharp, maybe natural, and you play it all together. That's what a chord is. And when you see it written in music, that's what it is. However, you can't do that on a woodwind. Let me show you my keyboard here. So I'm playing a chord. This one can only do 2 notes at a time, so I'm really not playing a chord, but I just want to show you that this C, E, G, C, those notes are basically 2 or 3 apart. C, E, that's a third. And then from E to G, that's another third. From G to C, that's a fourth. Most of them are third. But you have 3 to 5 notes, most of them thirds, and you play them together and you get the chord like I did on the melodica. However, woodwinds don't play chords because you can only play 1 note at a time. So what you end up is playing an arpeggio in which you play the notes of a chord, but you play them only 1 at a time. That's an arpeggio. That's an arpeggio. You can do it in different keys, but you don't play the notes together. You play them separate. And sometimes it is called a broken chord because of that, but the real name of it is an arpeggio. Now, what I wanted to do, I wrote a song. Well, let me define these other things first. Okay, a phrase is when you have a group of notes that are together because they belong together. I'm going to play a song that I wrote to demonstrate all of this in a minute, but the phrase is like a division of notes, usually 4 to 8 measures. And if you want to think of it this way, as an example, when we talk in phrases, don't we? Like, for example, I'm going to the store to buy groceries. I'll pick up your laundry on the way back. That's 2 separate phrases. I'm going to the store to buy groceries. That's one phrase. I'll pick up your laundry on the way back. That's another phrase. The 2 are kind of connected to each other because it has to do with the fact that I'm going out and what I'm going to do. But the statements could stay on their own and not be related to each other. I'm going out to get groceries is one sentence. It does not have to be related to I'll pick up your groceries on the way back. Or I could walk out the door and say, oh, by the way, I'm going to pick up your groceries on the way back, and not even say the first phrase. But we talk like that. We talk in phrases. We don't say, I'm going out to buy groceries. I'll stop and get your laundry on the way back. We talk in phrases. We don't chop up what we're saying. And so that's the same, that's the same as it is in music. We don't chop it up. There are notes that belong to each other, and then there are notes that belong to each other, and we put them side by side, and music becomes kind of a language like that. Usually a division of music from 4 to 8 measures. Any phrase is usually, now there's nothing to say it can't be different than that, but that's what it usually is. Slurring is when you play 2 notes or more and you don't tongue. You don't take a break between the notes. You just put all the notes together and you don't tongue them. So if it's the same note, it seems like a longer note. You can have 2 notes, hold them together, play them as one, and not make a break between the notes, and that's slurring. And then tonguing, which I've talked about before, you use your tongue to interrupt tones so that instead of playing one long tone, you just play by tonguing, and so they're all individual notes. Now what I've done is I've written a piece. There's no background music for this. I just wrote it yesterday. I wanted to write, and I've only got 1 minute left. Let me just go run through this quickly, and then we're going to close, and I'm going to begin with this again next time. Or maybe I'll just wait and do it next time. That makes a lot more sense to me with less than a minute left. So we'll close it here, and I'll continue with this next time. Please join me then.